Hi, my name is Christopher Keast. I'm an author from Port Dover, Ontario. I'm here today to discuss my authorship and my new book, Datapocalypse. So my family and I have been living in Port Dover for about 4 years. My wife grew up here actually, and we kind of came back after traveling around. My wife's actually a teacher with the Grand Erie School Board. My daughter attends Lakewood Elementary School, so we've got some pretty firm roots set up. We love it in Norfolk. We come to Simcoe a lot and go to other places to go hiking and just to get outside even during the pandemic. So it's a great place to be for sure. I'd say my affiliation with the library goes back to my childhood. Living in Sudbury, that's where I grew up until I finished high school, and going to the library was, a huge advantage for me to have access to so much literature. I read probably a new book every week from the library, and I continue to the day. I mean, every week there's a new batch coming, so we're thankful for that. My daughter loves having new books from her favorite authors, and I do as well. If we didn't have the library, we'd have books coming out our ears, stacking the walls and windows in our house. So we're thankful for that borrowing economy that the library offers. Where I'm also very thankful for this to be set up for me, to be able to talk to people interested in local authors and local literature. It's always great to go local and start at the grassroots level and spread out from there. So yeah, very happy to be here. Yeah, so writing contests are very good for new authors, especially ones that want to get noticed by agents or self-publish their book and start a platform or try and get a traditional publishing deal. It can be difficult from my experience. I've entered, I think, about a handful so far. Yeah, I've actually entered about 5 more contests just in the last month of 2021 with some new work that I've put out. Short stories mostly. So yeah, I'm going to continue to do that, including the upcoming short story contest for the Norfolk County Library. So yeah, I've entered ones with CBC and with Toronto Star and Grit Lit. So I'm going to continue to do that. I think it's a great way to get work out there, get an author's name out there, and there are other ways to get published as far as getting into literary magazines and whatnot, but contests are a great way to do it as well. So the way I started writing, at least fiction, literature, is an interesting story. It started about 3.5, 4 years ago. So before that, I'd written, poetry, music, songwriting, that kind of thing, just personal stuff. Nothing that I'd ever show to the world in the way that I do with Datapocalypse and with my current writing. But it started actually when we were traveling in Europe, and we'd gone for a few weeks, actually a few weeks into our trip. I've noticed a lot of photography going on all over, Italy and Greece, where people just walked around with their cameras out, whether it's from their smartphone or an actual professional camera, just taking pictures of everything. And I just have this memory of Rome specifically, where I was at the Trevi Fountain, and it's a beautiful, work of art. And I could barely even see the fountain because of all of the cameras kind of in front of me. That left a mark in my mind, and I thought to myself, wow, everyone's really taking a lot of pictures of everything. Do they really have time to look at all these pictures later on down the road? And that was kind of a joke. And then I made an even bigger joke on top of that, where I said, well, what would happen if all of the things that we're taking pictures of just start mysteriously disappearing? And there's no reason or rhyme or reason to that, but I just thought it was a funny idea. And I kept thinking about it over a couple of days, and one of my friends that we were with challenged me. She said, why don't you write a book about it? And she didn't really mean much by it. I think it was just kind of a joke, a running joke. But I thought about it, and I actually, I was up for the challenge. I kind of thought the idea had some legs, and it had more to it than just some joke. So I kind of thought about it more, and actually I was hiking one day on my own one morning, and I actually just pulled out my notebook and started writing a page, what I think it could be, just the first page of the book. And it actually ended up being the first page with a few edits here and there. From that, it kind of motivated me to keep going and writing, and actually within a few months, I think I had several chapters finished. I had a whole idea structured out. It morphed from there into much larger ideas. But that initial idea was exactly that. From there, I looked into more, scientific principles of photography and data storage. Digital photography is huge these days, and it got me thinking. Data is stored in large server warehouses, basically all over the world. So those actually consist of physical things. They are pieces of metal and silicon and wires, and they take energy to cool and to power. Those things are not infinite. So that got me thinking even more. Well, every time someone takes a picture, that's more data being accumulated in these data warehouses. How long can that go on? It can't go on forever unless we find some way of storing it more minutely or powering it with a different energy source than the standard source. So that all kind of agglomerated in my mind, and I thought to myself, well, maybe that can tie into the story, where it could be this idea of sort of over photography, or over maybe an addiction to photography, and then that with the fact that there's this threshold that no one really knows on Earth of how much data can be stored and used before something happens, right? Where, eventually we run out of space or energy. So it got pretty deep from there. I tried to keep it focused and actually very tongue-in-cheek, where it's got a lot of humor and satire to it all. So there's a serious underlying message, which I like to do with most of my writing, but it's usually layered with more humanistic and natural tendencies, where it's very tongue-in-cheek, dialogue-based, and fun. So from there, things progressed to the point where I actually began enjoying the process of writing. I would get up very early in the morning and just have a couple of hours to write, to do something I realized I love. And through that process, I also had to learn an awful lot about the craft itself. I did not have a formal background in writing, so I'm an engineer by trade, so you can imagine trying to fit an engineer's mind into fiction literature. It takes a bit of molding and a change of perspective. So I read a lot of books on the craft. I spoke to editors and reached out to people in the industry, read a lot of articles, tried to hone in my craft a little more, and I think I got better each and every day and each and every book that I read on the subject. But it was not easy. I mean, it's basically like a career change in the middle of your life. I'm 40 years old, and I still, obviously, engineering is my career, but there's this piece of me that really wants to be a writer. So forever, if that could be my day to day, I would be probably the happiest person on earth. So I try and fit that into my current day, and that's fine, and it works pretty well. The next stage would obviously be taking either my self-published writings to the next level, or to try and seek out a traditional publishing deal, which would be amazing to have somebody asking me to write books. That would be the panacea for me. So it's been really fun and challenging and rewarding so far, and I'm looking forward to future endeavors and future rewards and success. So I'd like to read a chapter from my novel Datapocalypse. This chapter I chose, it's pretty short and sweet and to the point. It's chapter 18. So it's sort of as the plot is thickening, so to speak, in the story. The title of the chapter is called Feeder Spybots, which is kind of a funky name, but essentially one of the protagonists is in a bit of a bind, and she's trying to get herself out by seeking out help from a fellow data scientist, but it's actually a little more tongue-in-cheek than it may sound, so I'm happy to read this to you. So, "Who is this?" the man said, with a British accent. "I can't tell you my name, but I know who you are, and I'm requesting your help. Dr. Ashante had a scrambled low rumble voice, using her recently developed muddling software. Help with what? You opened an encrypted email I sent a couple of weeks ago from someone named Developer X, she said. Yes, that's right. The topic of inquiry piqued my interest. I know you didn't respond to the email, but you may have at least read it, yes? I did, admittedly. Every word of it was true, she said, blunt as could be. There isn't much time left. I need your help to stop them before it's too late. How did you find me? He interrupted. Dr. Whatley, like you, I'm very good with computers and the interconnected world. Huh? We are both lifelong scholars of computer science, you more than I, from a formal academic's perspective. She bit her tongue, trying to impress him. She heard a sigh through the phone. Look, he said, I read your statement, and it was an interesting theory, but it's a story that seems a tad far-fetched, even for me. What if I can guarantee you that it's true? Perhaps even prove it to you in person. I feel uncomfortable discussing this. It feels like a charade. This is why I didn't respond to your email, chalking it up as spam. And here you are now, talking to me with some strange anonymized voice, Dr. Whatley said. Mr. Whatley, this clearly must sound strange from your end of the line, but I have information on the irremnantizations that I need to divulge to you. You can aid in thwarting any further ones. How does that involve me? Please just trust me, she said, becoming desperate, gripping his insolence, pardon me. I don't know who you are, nor whether you're pulling my leg, and I don't know that it even matters. In any case, you bug off, you scamp. I beg you, there's nobody else to turn to. Her scrambled voice became strangely frail. Don't call this number again. Click. After closing the app on her device, her eyes glistened as she looked out into the Budapest skyline, noting what a huge loss this was. A week had passed since her first contact with Whatley. She'd tried several more times but never got through. Not having heard from anyone else she'd reached out to, nobody even so much as read her anonymous email, and having no luck with Dr. Whatley, she needed to seek out alternatives. During this time, she began monitoring and spying on anyone suspicious, including people who seemed to be hanging around any of the affected sites more than they normally should have been. She did this by hacking into surveillance cameras on and around each site, then downloading the footage to her local machine and applying her internal algorithms for deeper surveillance. Careful record of everyone was filed in an offline database in case they needed to be retrieved later, captured and identified using her visual recognition and lip-reading devices and algorithms. Several days later, while searching the internet for clues on where her exposé statement had landed, if anywhere, and for anybody else who could be leveraged for help, she began to realize how effective this cover-up was going, albeit against her. So much for the bloody open internet revolution. Then she came to a site, found on the third hit page of her query. It was simply yet infatuatingly called Datapocalypse Now. Opening the page and perusing, her reading quickly intensified as though the content was taken right out of her mouth. Is this a joke? It offered an explanation, perhaps insane sounding to some, but not to her. She could tell that whoever wrote it was on track to figuring out what was causing the irremnantizations. What she couldn't tell, however, was whether this was bait luring her into a trap. The only way to know for sure was to find its creator. She initiated a few choice hacks into the site's platform as it became clear that whoever the creator of the site was, they had taken some prudence in attempting to cover up their tracks. But she was much smarter than some simple URL traceability blurring app. After looping through a few insignia holes and tunneling through virtual networks explored by the very few, she found the name of someone who had recently logged in as site administrator, as traced from their Celestipy. The name of the person? Kaisis Ryan O'Ryan. She used some creative digging techniques to find out who this was, just in case. Wow, it's the same guy. A guy she had traced and monitored at the Coliseum a few days prior. He was goofily roaming around the site, doing some sort of touring, but got caught by authorities and was quickly scared off. She then traced him, the woman and other man he was with the day prior, to find out about what they were up to. If the lip reading was flawless, this Orion was getting close to figuring it out, even if merely stumbled upon. This gave her a good feeling. He surely wasn't after her and could possibly help her. Taking some steps to hide her own tracks, she sent a dark web anonymous message to this Orion via the Datapocalypse Now domain, hoping to make contact. He may represent her only chance. Patiently, she waited for his reply. Little did she know that feeder spy bots began tracking her every move. End of chapter. I should clarify some of the terminology used in the book. A lot of the words, people may not have heard before. One is irremnantizations. It's really a fabrication of mine where things disappear literally out of thin air, like a building, let's say, and nobody knows why. And the word irremnantization is there's no remnants left. So it's sort of a take on, disappeared out of thin air. It's a way of verbalizing that that sort of term. I would say it's science fiction, but there's a lot of literary component to all of this. There's romance, there's travel, intrigue, mystery. So I don't want to limit it to just the science fiction genre, so to speak, but there is a pretty heavy component of that in here, but I don't think it's unachievable for people to enjoy from any genre. Okay, well, thank you very much for tuning in today. I've enjoyed this, enjoyed reading to you. I thank the Norfolk County Library very much for this opportunity. And if you'd like to learn more about Datapocalypse or some of my other writings, I have a blog and website. The URL is christopherkeast.com. Keast is spelled K-E-A-S-T. And you can subscribe to my newsletter and check out my book, Datapocalypse, if you'd like to take a look. Thank you very much.